Hey, this is Pamela Schneider. I'm the retail editor for Blue Book Services, and I have Greg Johnson here, our director of media development. And this is the Produce Reporter Week in Review. And this week kind of had a press release from the FDA kind of squeak through, and I haven't seen very much about it in the media, but it could blow up. What's going on?
It's kind of it's it's a really potential bad news story, but right now it's not bad news. It's FDA released the news that they found, or they're tracking two separate E. coli outbreaks, and they've not tied it to a specific food product, but it is a similar strain that they've seen before in outbreaks regarding romaine and leafy greens. So it's not tied to rain right now as of Thursday, the 29th. But when you and I talked about it, this is a huge red flag, because this is the same thing we saw the last two Novembers, where we had a big outbreak with romaine, and it's devastating to the market. Now, 2 years ago, they pulled romaine off shelves across the country. Last year, they were able to isolate it a little bit so that it didn't affect the entire market. But it's a weird time in that early November is traditionally the transition from the California areas down to the desert, and it looks like everything's going according to plan. So we're kind of right in the middle, and we don't know yet, but it could be really bad.
And the timing is also interesting. And Frank Yanis from FDA, who is a former produce guy, he worked for Walmart for years, was careful with his language, saying that they released this information in the early part of the traceback. So this is not something definitive that they have, but then when you read down in the release that you see it's the genetic strain, the same exact genetic strain as 2019's E. coli outbreak tied to Central California. So that is kind of alarming. And I'm concerned that this is going to blow up again. And I know the industry has to be concerned. We got an email from PMA about it with some careful language saying that's too preliminary to point the finger at romaine. But man, there are a whole lot of, correlating factors, whatever you want to call it. Correlation is not causation, but a whole lot of parallels that we can draw from, the last 2 years of romaine issues.
Yeah, and in the U.S., our FDA is taking a very careful approach, but our neighbors to the north are not taking a careful approach. They, at the beginning of October, they made it very difficult for romaine from 4 counties in California to make it into Canada. I mean, they basically required certain levels of guarantees, and some of which are guarantees that are impossible to guarantee based on the way our food safety system is right now. So it's a lot of us think it's unfair, but that's what countries can do. Yeah. Unfair or not, that's the reality.
And all of what we see out there is you can't test your way to food safety, and they're requiring tests on what is it, all of it? From all 4 counties in California. They're fixing to pick up and go to Yuma, so I'm wondering if Canada is going to impose a similar things. And I don't know, is this related somehow to what's going on with this traceback of this outbreak? The timing all just seems a little fishy to me. So that's something that we're going to have to keep a careful eye on over the next couple of weeks.
We are.
I also saw this week that Sprouts Farmers Market had its quarterly reports, and of course I love to dig into those and especially catch the Q&As at the end. And Jack Sinclair, their CEO, talked about how the company has really focused on fresh produce, and the pandemic has pushed forward a lot of its 5-year strategy. If you can recall, back before it was acquired by Sprouts, Sunflower Farmers Market had tagline, "Serious Food, Silly Prices," and it seems like they're trying to get away from that loss leader in the fresh produce side of things. It used to be where they go like super hot ad on like 3 or 4 things to draw people in, and then the everyday price of everything else would be quite a bit higher, a higher margin. It looks like they're stepping away from that. And then they also have a couple of distribution centers preparing to open next year in Florida and Colorado. And they reorganized their buying structure to do centralized buying on heavy commodities and then more regional local buyers. So a lot of changes at Sprouts.
I noticed there were a few key phrases in the CEO's comments that made me chuckle, which one of which was great value, and the other was um, the other. What was the other one?
Everyday low price.
Oh yeah, everyday low price, great value. I don't know where they're getting these ideas.
I
I have
don't know
no idea where
where
it
they're
might come
getting.
from. Perhaps the largest retailer in the United States.
Perhaps the largest retailer in the United States, but perhaps a retailer that doesn't execute quite as well in produce as Sprouts does. They did talk about how they have seen a lot of success in frozen and center store items, and that is something that Sprouts has not focused on as much. And during the pandemic, when people are stocking up, and by the way, we're seeing stock up behavior come back. And I even felt it the other day when I was at the store and I threw an extra bag of rice in my cart. Bought a bag, just one. I can just feel the itch of people wanting to stock back up again. So
And when you say people, you mean you.
me, but no. There's stories all over the internet. Retail
There's
Wire
lots of scaredy cats out there.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of scaredy cats. I'm not a scaredy cat, but hey, I don't want to run out of rice because I don't want all these other people. There, I'm sure, will be numerous psychological studies after this is over of American behavior on, when we talk about, stocking up and worrying and wanting to make sure that you don't run out of toilet paper. My husband made us buy an extra bag of toilet paper at Costco the other day. He's like, hey, they've got it. Just go ahead and get one. It's just the mind of the consumer. It's a crazy, weird web of whatever in there. And sometimes that means you get extra rice.
Or it could just be that people are feeling abused, and that's how abused people deal with things.
Lining my nest is not a coping strategy. Speaking of COVID shopping behaviors, or at least COVID response, less than a month after Secretary Perdue said maybe it's time to let the food box program run its course, we saw another $500 million authorized for the program starting November 1st and running through December 31st. That it's quite a bit less than has been authorized before, but every single one of them, it seems, has gotten a smaller amount. So hopefully that means that there's less need out there.
That would be the goal, and that's what Perdue hinted at when he talked during the United Public Policy Online. I believe that's where he said that the hope would be it wouldn't be necessary, but unfortunately it is still necessary, both from consumers needing food and the grower shippers needing an outlet, because food service has not come anywhere near back, and neither has institutional or any of those other outlets that have been strong in the past. Of course, it's not all bad news for the ones in the program. It's great news for the ones in the program. I talked to Bob Proffer, who runs a wholesaler out of Southeast Missouri, and they have participated in all the program, the phases so far. And he was getting their bid ready for phase 4, and it was going to be higher than phase 3. He's one of the ones that transitioned from just packing the produce, the 15-pound or so produce box, to a 30-pound combo box with dairy and meat. And he said it went pretty well. He said early on in that phase, it took a while to get comfortable dealing with the different life cycles and business cycles of meat and dairy as opposed to what he's used to in produce. But they got it figured out, and he was expecting to make a stronger bid for phase 4. And he said it's been good business, and it's been good for the people he's talked to who have been receiving it. He said he's gotten lots of positive things, so that's good to hear. It's making a difference. And he also said he's hearing that from all the suppliers. And he's mixing it up. So he's not just supplying the same produce. He's trying to figure out what in the market is long and buy some of that and get it into his program.
What I noticed about the way that the program has evolved, not only have the suppliers, the distributors in the middle figured out how to do this better, but also the last mile folks have figured out how to get these boxes distributed. I know Produce Alliance, one of the last mile people that or organizations that they're working with, has really ramped up their procedures and made it a much more efficient process. So the way that they are announcing award winners, they give you the regular list, but then they also break it down county by county, and it's actually a 90-page PDF. It's incredibly detailed, showing exactly which companies. Like on the first page, I see just for Alabama, you see Produce Alliance, TNT Produce, Cisco, and it's just every single county in the state is broken down, so you can get a better idea of who's getting what and for where. And that's some of the transparency that we didn't see earlier in the program. I don't know if that's more helpful or not, but it just seems like everyone involved in this whole process has refined their logistics, and it seems like it's a better run machine. I'm not going to call it a well-run machine, but it at least is a better run machine.
Yeah, that's one of the things that Bob Proffer said is not only does he feel like he's learning something every week on how to make it better and more efficient, but he feels like USDA is doing the same.
All right, well, we will keep an eye on that. Hopefully we will not see another award January 1st because we don't need it. I mean, if the industry needs it, then of course, hopefully the USDA will continue to fund the program because it does seem like it's getting a lot more efficient. But until then, that's it for the Produce Reporter Weekend Review. If you're not getting the Produce Reporter newsletter, go to producebluebook.com and sign up. And it's all Greg next week because I'm on vacation.
We'll figure it out.